This is Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Mark. And today's guest made me question my preconceived notions. It's singer-songwriter Tony Cuchetti. And even though it sounds like he's from New Jersey, he's not. He's actually from a Partridge Family type of performing group. As a kid, he moved from Detroit to Florida and began performing as a musical act. And there were a lot of family members. Tony talks about literally growing up on the road, performing all over the country. But when the family band stopped, Tony had a tough time adjusting. He excelled in sports and even playing minor league baseball, but music kept calling to him. He's just released his latest album, Freer Street, and it's a cool progression of his Americana sound. Tony and I talk about his recording approach, like not letting the musicians hear the music until they were in the studio, recording only a few takes of each song, and playing live in the same room. He also tells how legendary musician Greg Inhofer got involved. Tony emphasized how important it was to being open to the direction the music wanted to go and not trying to force it one way or another. We also touch on the fading art of sequencing an album. So check out his new album, Freer Street, on streaming platforms. Go to tonycuchetti.com for physical copies. While you're there, check out his socials. And check out ours, too, at PerformanceANX on Twitter and Instagram. Feed our coffee habit at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety. Buy some merch at performanceanx.threadless.com. And now get ready for an unusual ride with Tony Cuchetti on Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Tony Cuchetti on the Performance Anxiety Podcast, and I would like to say big shout out, thanks to Mark Shea for having me on. And you can find my music at tonycuchetti.com or Farm to Label Records. Check out my new album called Freer Street. It was a good time making it, and would love for you to hear it and absorb it. And thanks so much for listening. Keep on listening. I'm such a horrible talker, dude. Yeah, maybe we should try that again. Yeah, I'll do another one. Oh, man. All right. Hey, this is Tony Cuchetti on Performance Anxiety Podcast. Thanks to Mark Shea for having me. I got a new album out, Freer Street. It's on all the streaming platforms. I love how it sounds on vinyl. You can get a copy of the vinyl from my record label, Farm to Label Records. And .com or tonycuchetti.com, and it's on all the socials, and I would really love you to check it out. It's great. It's cool, got a good vibe, and Mark and I had a great talk about it. So listen to Performance Anxiety Podcast. Love what Mark does, and thanks so much for having me again. I'm Tony Cuchetti, and I'll see you guys soon. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you for doing it. Thank you for the reschedule. That was a little unexpected. We don't get a whole lot of tornadoes around here, so.
Oh man, I know it's. We get a lot of them up here in the Midwest, so it's. I understand.
When I used to get them all the time when I lived in Alabama, and moving up to Virginia, we don't get quite as much.
Yeah, it's weird when they come through. I'm in Minnesota, but we don't get as many as kind of like, Kansas and those areas do. But we do get. And one thing I had to get used to when I moved up because I used to live in Florida for a lot of years, and was the storms being at night up here. The most intense ones are like in the middle of the night because
really?
When it gets warm, and then that instant like cold air clashes when the sun goes down.
Oh,
and
wow.
So it makes like killer, like crazy intense lightning storms. Like and in Florida, you could set your watch to it like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon,
Yep. Oh yeah. You knew it was coming, and it wouldn't last very long, but it would be there.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. Again, I want to thank you for joining me and the reschedule and all. It's I went back and have been listening to the album. I was all prepped for a couple of weeks ago, and then had to cancel last minute, reschedule. So I had to go back and reorient myself with the music again. So it was almost like listening to, I should say it wasn't like listening to it new again but it was actually more like listening to an old favorite again. So it was really neat experience.
Yeah, I get that too when I listen to it again, because I'll go away from it, on purpose for a while, and then I'll listen to it again, and it's like you pick up these little nuances that you're like, oh man, I forgot that, or I didn't even know that was going on before. It's your own music. It's weird.
Well, I was able to I don't know if it was just because I kind of work myself up into a frenzy a little bit when I'm prepping for these things. And maybe it's because I knew I had all my prep done. I had all my notes done and everything. I didn't have to worry about it. I ended up paying a little more attention to the lyrics. And I think you've inspired me to do another podcast.
Wow.
There's the song. Oh, gosh. Now I have to look at my list to see if I wrote something. Heartbreak Town. I was listening to that. That's my favorite on the album, by the way. You say the phrase drunker than a monkey. And I think that inspired me to do a new podcast where I had a guest and we just get stinking drunk, and I just call it Drunken Monkey. And I don't know what the hell we're going to talk about.
That sounds awesome.
But we'll just sit here and get trashed and talk smack about shit. I don't know.
I did that a few months ago with a couple of college buddies that I haven't talked to in a while. And we started off, it was like, hey, because one lives in Denver and one's in New Jersey. And we were like, yeah, let's just, chat, have a couple beers, and we're like, cool. And by the end of it, man, we were just into the whiskey, and it was like, it was bad news, man. I
do that with some of the podcasts. This is my last bottle of whiskey is almost gone. Oh, yeah. Clyde Mays. Clyde Mays has got me into some trouble.
Yeah, man.
On the podcast. I don't even... But that's what you get for straight bourbon whiskey from Alabama.
Yeah, man. That's good stuff.
Well, going back to the original time we were supposed to record, when I started listening to the music, it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. I wasn't really expecting an Americana country kind of sound because I grew up in New Jersey. And so when I hear Tony Cuchetti, I'm thinking a rock band with it's Tony Cuchetti, Sal Catanzareti, Paulie Knuckles, and Vinny DeVideo or something, I don't know exactly. So all of a sudden I hear this beautiful, soft Americana sound. I'm like, oh, wow, wait, this is not what I was expecting at all. Because obviously I didn't do any prep beforehand and read any of the bio. So I just dove right into the music. And
cool.
So it was really interesting. But you mentioned that you didn't grow up in New Jersey. You're from Detroit originally, right?
Yep, from Detroit, Michigan. My family, my whole family's from there. And my dad had an opportunity in probably 78 or 9 in Central Florida, because my whole family, we can get into that too, but we're all entertainers, and my dad and mom are both still professional entertainers and own a music school down in Florida. But they, he had an opportunity, and so he moved the family, because we were in Detroit proper, like the southwest side of it, and he,
wow,
he one of the big Polish neighborhoods, because my mom's 100% Polish, but we, it was getting pretty rough. It was like one of those where the neighborhood wasn't what it was, and he jumped on this opportunity and took the family down there, and so we ended up settling down there. So I grew up the good majority of my life down there in Florida, just south of Daytona Beach. So
okay,
yeah, so
I know that area a bit.
Yeah, so that's what brought me down there, and then I always wanted to get back to the Midwest though, because my family kind of never settled into the kind of Southern way of life. It was more like we kept our Midwestern roots and the kind of Detroit city roots. And it was good though. I mean, it was great. And then, but I always wanted to get back. I never felt like Florida was like where I belonged, and then so.
It's an interesting spot in Florida because you're not getting all the panhandle nonsense that happens there. But and with Florida, the further south you go, the more north you are. Because
exactly,
you get everybody from New York and New Jersey and all that.
It's so true, and that's true on the west side of Florida too. You get all the, but where I was, it was great. It was a beautiful place to grow up. I mean, it was right on the beach. It was, but it's I think I just never really felt like, especially as I got more into my own music, like I never felt like there was a place for me to blossom in that area, because it was a lot of tourism and a lot of the bars you had to do the proverbial stuff that the area wanted, and it was cool for a while, but then if you said I'm having an itch to like write my own stuff and all that, and it just when I heard about the Twin Cities scene, I was like, man, I gotta check that out, and I fell in love with it right away. So
we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Before you skip over this ad, give me 1 minute. Like most podcasts, I pick sponsors carefully, and I use the products that advertise here. Pure Spectrum CBD is a product that has been really beneficial for me. They have a wide variety of great products that can be used on a daily or as needed basis. I've been using the tincture every day, and it's been wonderful for easing anxiety. And I absolutely love the isolate. I use it instead of acetaminophen or ibuprofen, and it's worked so well for the relief of aches and pains. They also have soaks, lotions, salves, gummies, and more, plus an entire line for fitness recovery. They even have products for your pets. See everything they offer at purespectrumcbd.com. And if you have questions, they're there to help. They helped me when I had no idea where to start. After you fill your cart, use code PerformanceANX for 15% off your purchase. Pure Spectrum CBD, Pure Spectrum CBD, Pure Spectrum CBD. Yeah, so it's like that's Central Florida particularly. You either have to do Jimmy Buffett or metal.
Right. Yeah, I mean, or it was like there was some really great, that's the thing is there's amazing artists there, and like these underground kind of surf rock and punk and stuff and really cool bands, but they all end up moving away or they go to LA or whatever because there's nothing, you know what I'm saying? So, but I saw some amazing bands and some great songwriters, that I still am friends with down there. So,
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that your family is a bunch of entertainers. So saying music was a big presence in your life growing up is kind of an understatement.
Yes, very much so. Yeah,
So how did this whole? Can you describe a little bit about this opportunity for your dad and how you guys got into being? Because it ended up being like your whole family was a big musical group, like was it like a Partridge Family kind of situation?
It totally was, and it was called the Conti family, CONTI, because my dad wanted an easier kind of stage name, to
makes sense
to use, and that was that era of the family groups that would travel around, and so he and my mom got the idea that they wanted to start, a family act, and my older, I'm number 8 of 10 kids, and yeah, so I have my older siblings were the ones that kind of initiated the whole thing with my mom and dad, and he got a bus and his buddies converted it, and he just started booking gigs, and we were on the road probably 11 months out of the year and just doing doing malls and fairs and conventions and Las Vegas and all. So I mean, I was kind of born into it, and my parents were both school teachers before that prior. So they taught us, through the mail on the road. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was some amazing, cause my dad was, he was a session player at Motown. He's a trumpet player and also symphonic player. My mom was like an operatic singer, and so we were just immersed in all this different kind of music. And then I got a lot of the influences from my older siblings, like listening to the 70s stuff they were listening to. And
nice.
So we're just like a little sponge,
Well, you didn't have a choice. I mean,
right. No, it was like a farm family, you followed it
was a family business, man.
Right. Exactly.
And you're a kid, you really don't have a choice.
No, and it was, a lot of people say, was it horrible? Because they're looking at it through the lens of remembering their childhood. But like you said, I was born into it, and that's all I knew, and it was a killer way to grow up, because you were always on the road, different cities, you got to do cool stuff. And it was just like, so I loved it. It was a lot of fond memories. So were you traveling nationally all over the place, or was it more regional? Yeah, we were all over the country, and we used to do Canada a lot, and never went overseas. But it was huge. I mean, like I said, we were all over the U.S. So how many years did you do it? Were you part of that? So it was 16, I think, almost 17 total, and I probably did. I did it from I probably did it for like the last 10, almost 11 years. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then when we stopped permanently and settled in Florida, that's when I kind of started, quote, regular school, and, then got into that. And so started getting into. Was that hard to transition into being stationary? Totally. It was, I have vivid memories of like being totally shell shocked and like not wanting to leave the house and crying and this, because all I knew was my family, you know, all the time. And all of a sudden I was in this environment where these kids were used to kind of the way things worked and I didn't, you know, and it was like, it was a shell shock. But once I started meeting friends, you know, after a few months, it got easier and, you know, kind of, but it was hard at first for sure. Real hard.
Man. So after you stopped, were you still into music? Because I know sports ended up being a big thing for you, but were you still into the music as intensely as you were while you were actually performing it?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't personally because I was kind of, you know, younger, but I mean, my siblings still stayed with it and kind of got into the, like my older brothers started doing like what I'm doing now, you know, like just performing solo and with like bands they made up. And my dad and mom kept going and like I said, started music school down there, and a lot of my siblings taught at it, still teach at it. But for me, yeah, I kind of just, you know, I was doing music like in school and all that, but it wasn't to the degree that I was, you know, on the road. And yeah, then I got into sports real heavy, baseball, and played that all through college. And I even played 2 seasons in the minor leagues. I was a pitcher. And
wow. So who'd you play for?
I played for the first season was the Texas Rio Grande Valley White Wings. It was the Southern Texas. I'm trying to think who they were affiliated with, and it slips my mind. And then the second season, I went to the New Jersey Jackals in Montclair, New Jersey, up there. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I know exactly where that is. Yeah.
That was cool. It was I played with some cool guys like Pete Rose Jr.'s son and some really cool. Yeah, it was a fun time. I mean, I still miss it a lot, you know. So.
Oh, I'll bet. I know. I've got a couple of friends who played minor league ball, and they're always talking about it to this day. Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about it literally today with a buddy of mine who's back out in California. He was drafted by the Rangers and played a couple of years in minor league, and same thing. Yeah. It's like, yeah, those are the best days. Still in touch with so many of those guys.
Yeah, you still do. I mean, literally, it's some of the best friends I have still are guys that, you know, from that whole, you know, that thing that I did. Yeah, it was great.
That is awesome. So you sing and you play guitar. When did you start? Did you start, I guess, playing instruments in the family band, or did that come afterwards?
It came afterwards. I kind of I think I absorbed and learned a lot of it from my older siblings because I just was around it and I was watching, especially my, one of my older brothers, he is a great guitar player and he's singer. And I kind of was always watching him and he would show me stuff. And then I started kind of picking it up on my own. And then, you know, I started playing it more seriously when I got to like college. And then even in baseball, I remember always having my guitar with me. And then I started dabbling and writing songs. And then when baseball was over, I really went, you know, all in head first and got back into it more serious and started, you know, kind of doing I worked up some tunes and started doing some solo gigs and a couple, did some stuff with my younger sister. And then we just started, you know, making bands and kind of doing that. And then, yeah, so it was just, that was where that road started. So
was there something that kick-started you back into music after baseball, or was it just a natural progression? How did that whole thing start up again?
Yeah, it was totally a natural progression because I just, you know, it was always in my life, music. And I knew that at some point I was going to get back into it. And so I actually met a really good friend of mine in Jacksonville when I was right after I got out of the minors. And he happened to be a songwriter. And we met at a restaurant. We were waiting tables together and we started writing started dabbling and writing songs, and that's kind of what kicked that whole thing. And then from there, it was just, you know, the floodgates were open, and I just started going and going. So yeah.
Waiting on Your Ghost. That's your debut. I guess I should ask: is that the debut, or is there any other independent releases, or was that the very first thing that you really concentrated on releasing?
I would say that was like the first thing that I released on my own, as far as like. Because when I left Florida, you know, I kind of came up here, and all my family who I was in bands with, you know, stayed in Florida. So I kind of started my own thing up here, and that I'd say it was kind of like the first thing I had done. But before that, you know, there was a couple of bands. There was one called The Afterwhile and one called Minister Theory. And that was with a few of my siblings and some other friends. And so a lot of that, music that came from that kind of spun to what I was doing, in my solo career. But yeah, to answer your question, that kind of was the first, independent. Yeah. Me on my own,
Okay. Now I have a question about the timeline, kind of, I hate saying kind of, why did I say that? So I just have a question about the timeline. There's no kind of, that's exactly what I mean. Did Waiting on Your Ghost come out before or after Tin Can Tunes with Joe Flip?
That was before, quite a bit before.
Okay.
Yeah. But I still was, I was like half writing the songs that ended up on Waiting on Your Ghost. A lot of them were written while I was still in Florida. And then when that album Opportunity came up, I was using a lot of that material, on that album that I had written. And then, I didn't meet Joe till probably about, I think, a year after I moved up here in Minnesota. So.
Oh, okay. Cause they're different sounds and it's
totally
pretty wild because, and I'm looking at my notes. And I got to remember which songs are on which album because I neglected to make a note of that. It's a very, very professional podcast I run here. No,
that's fine. It got kind of weird with that because when I met Joe, we kind of were doing we met as he wanted to do some like gigs locally with me, and then it was kind of more his baby, and I was kind of doing, like I said, shows with him and this and that. And then he wanted to cut a demo to pitch to this blues challenge in Memphis that was coming up. And so we ended up doing a kind of a scratch demo deal. And some of the songs that I had on that were my originals ended up on there. And I kind of assumed it was going to just stay a demo. And that wasn't the case. I mean, Joe kind of, it turned out great, but what you hear in that Tin Can Tunes was first off a demo, and it kind of just,
wow.
It kind of just went that way, and he promoted it and all that. So long story short, that's how that unfolded. But that's why I feel like it's quite a bit different, because it wasn't like something I would have set out to do, out of the gate. Like it was more, we got to put this together so we can pitch it to this thing. And then, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was listening to Waiting on Your Ghost, and it's very singer-songwriter. And I kind of get a Gordon Lightfoot kind of feel out of it, especially totally. Porcelain Tub.
Yeah.
Porcelain tub, 100 years old, fill the water, reflects the glow of a candle, single flame, and the memories all that remain. Fairest maid the fall had seen, fell in love with a traveler's dream.
I love that, and I also love the song and the artist Brandi Carlile. Both are great. The album you did with Tony Flip is really cool also because Love and Biscuits, that's my favorite on that album. That is such cool. And I like that version of Inside Job.
Feed you falsely to fantasize, food clean. Then you realize
yeah. So see, that was that in Love and Biscuits I was writing for potentially my next album. And so, but it was like, hey, can we use this for this demo? And I'm like, yeah, why not? And then it became this, and I'm like, oh, shit. Like, like now what do I do? And it's like, so I never ended up putting it, like re-releasing it onto another album because I just felt weird about, what I'm saying? Like, and so that kind of left I love Joe, but it kind of left a little bit of a bad taste, in my mouth for that. But it was just like, it is what it is. And it happened, and it's like.
You live and learn, right? I guess.
Yeah. Right, so.
But so those are really cool albums.
Yeah.
But you took a super different approach to Hit It on the Sly. Very different writing approach to that. That was based on art submissions.
Yeah, that was it. A lot of it was I did this project through Minnesota. I got a grant through the state of Minnesota, and my idea I pitched was to put out a bunch of calls to like various artists in the state of Minnesota, like from all different platforms. And I gathered all their submissions, I think it was like over 200, and I had to narrow it down to like 12, and I was going to write an album based off of those, whatever it was, like painting, sculpture or whatever. And it turned out to be an amazing project because I didn't want to know their names or the titles of the work. I just wanted the piece to speak for itself to me. And then we had like a show after that. And that was the first time I met any of them and knew the titles of their work.
Oh, wow.
And it was super cool because a lot of it like eerily tied in to, their ideas of why they painted it or sculpted it. And I didn't know any of that going in. So it was cool how art kind of, bounced off each other that way. So, yeah.
Well, then it's success on both ends then. Exactly.
It was, yeah, that was, when I did that album, that was kind of the direction I was going in at that time. And I do that a lot though, because I'm a person that listens to all, different kinds of music all the time. And so I think it comes out in my writing and my projects where you're hearing this and then it's totally different the next time. And then totally, it's like.
It really is. I mean, so Hit It on the Sly, there's more of a country feel to it.
Sure.
And your voice even goes a little more Waylon-y. Yeah. A little more Waylon Jennings than it was before.
It's hard to dance with the devil on your back, burning holes in the floor with that unholy two-step. Just get yourself a preacher or a frozen knapsack, 'cause it sure ain't easy dancing with the devil on your back. Betty Lou was the prettiest in school, and I'll tell you.
And I'm liking your stuff more with each release as I'm listening to it. So it's.
I love listening to music that way, Mark. Like I love bands that kind of keep the same flavor, but my favorite bands are the ones that evolve and try and like stretch their limits, and try different things, because I love to listen to music that way. So I think it naturally comes out. Yeah,
exactly. Same way. And my biggest disappointment has always been Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
Cause I was so into their first two albums, and then I don't know, the way they progressed was not the way I wanted them to progress.
Yeah,
I'll probably edit all of this out, but
yeah, I get what you're saying. And it totally, but it like the one thing that I respected them for was that they did kind of keep going on the path they wanted to versus what they thought people needed to, kind of thing, and I don't, whether that hurt them, but I think they're still doing pretty well.
I remember hearing about them at some point recently. So yeah, I think they're doing all right.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. But you've got a few albums out. The new album, Freer Street, that's definitely got a grittier sound to it. Less Gordon Lightfoot, maybe more Stray Gators with a bit of Crazy Horse thrown in there.
Totally.
And I love the cover. That cover is awesome. That is so awesome. It starts off with a very country Americana feel to it with the After.
Feels like the sun just cast a new day. It's sinking low again, already headed for tomorrow. Seems like the face in the mirror looking my way.
Yeah,
that's a really awesome track. It's a great way to start the album.
Yeah.
And like you were just mentioning, there's a lot of different sounds to this. And that's one of the things I really enjoyed about it, because it convinced my heart. Things get a little more swampy.
I don't miss you in the nighttime, since we're apart. Got my head on straight now. All my friends think I'm great now. Now there's one thing left to do, that's convince my heart. Sleeping in every morning. I don't hear no lip.
Yeah.
So was this an album that you started like pandemic wise? Like was it started back then and just slowly progressed? And were these songs all morphing and changing as the time was going by?
They totally were. And it was during the pandemic, because I really got slowed way down, from gigging. And I think, looking back, like at first it was a shock because I'm like, oh no, I'm losing work. But then it kind of forced you to slow down and reassess what you were doing things. And it gave me a lot of time to write. And I think that's where this whole thing kind of started to churn. And I was putting these songs together, reworking them. I would let them sit for a few, weeks and then come back to them and change. And then I had always known I wanted to work with Eric Koskinen, who produced it and also played on the album. Yeah. He's a great local guy up here, just amazing songwriter, really got a great band. So when I called Eric, I kind of knew that was the direction I wanted to go into, kind of his vibe and with this project. And so when I met with him, these songs a couple of them were totally finished, but a lot of them were fledgling, and we kind of put them together. And and then we started putting together the list of people that I wanted to use on the album. And one of the coolest aspects, I think, of the project was that I didn't want any of the guys to hear the songs prior to the session.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I didn't send the music. Only Eric and I knew it. And when we got there to a Drum Farm studio in Wisconsin, we ended up living out there for 3.5 days. And so we set everything up, and the guys, that was their first take on a lot of all the tunes. Oh,
yeah. That is so cool.
Yeah, because I wanted their raw reaction. I didn't want them to be sitting there stewing over their parts for months. And not that there's anything against that, but just for this project, I wanted that raw. And another thing we did was I wanted it all to be in one room, and we all were set up in one room. I even cut the lead vocals in the same room at the same time. Yeah. And it was super cool. The experience was amazing. The owner of the studio just left it's an old farm, a working farm, and he has some of the outbuildings into a studio. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And you can just live there. And we were just recording around the clock, like when it was hitting us. It was awesome. Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool. So, So it sounds like without the pandemic, this would have been a much different album.
Totally. I think it might have not even happened, but if it did, it would have been completely different. So it kind of worked out the way it was supposed to. And it was a lot, you could feel in a lot of the tracks, the moodiness of the pent up pandemic feeling and the stuff you were seeing of people treating each other like shit. And, it was like that all coming together. And I just, so.
And that's really cool. Cause, I mentioned a couple of the tracks already, but each track, sounds so different. It seems they seem to come from a different space. Like you get a little more soul in with Lay It On Me.
Please don't try to be gracious. I know you'll know that ain't your style. Come on strong in your natural fashion. I know it's over, but walking our last mile. Lay it on me, my love. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But I love Stubborn Bones. That's kind of starts my favorite segment of the album. There's like this really raw Neil Young touch to it. It's especially the guitar tone, the playing, but there's also that beautiful almost like a Western guitar. Sounds almost like Marty Robbins or something in there. It's really
that's a baritone guitar. Yeah, I think Eric was playing that one, and it was there was so much going on in that track. It was cool. I mean, we had Abby Wolf was the girl that was singing with me on that. She's a good friend of mine, an amazing singer from the Twin Cities, and she has her own stuff. It's killer. But when I first was listening to the mix down of that song, JT Bates, the guy that played drums on the album, he knows Abby well too. And we were sitting there listening to the mix, and I said, man, JT, wouldn't Abby put this song, this track over them? And he looked at me and just smiled. And I called her the next day, and I'm like, will you just come in? And she's like, well, what do you want me to, she was all like, what do you want me to do? Do you have a part? I said, I want you to do what you do. And that's what and so she came in. Oh my God, it gives me chills. Like, I just, just listening to the part she layered and everything, it just put it over the moon. So. Oh,
I love hearing that.
The deal is done. No second chance. Washed in the precious blood of regret.
That's my favorite kind of stuff.
I know, yeah. And then another thing that you'll get a kick out of is Eric. He mixed it, as well as producing it. But we were in the studio one day, just he and I, and he goes, I think I'm hearing some, organ on some of these tracks, some Hammond B3. I said, totally. I said, I can hear it. He goes, I know a guy, and so he, this dude comes in. He's probably in his, I don't know, I'd say early 70s or whatever, and really energetic, cool dude, and it ended up being Greg Inhofer, who was Bob Dylan's organ player, from Blood on the Track. He played on Blood on the Tracks. And I was like, when Eric introduced me, and Greg's the most humble dude. And he's like, oh my God, that was a fun day. Cause he just, was like, yeah, play the song, and I'll put and he just started doing this killer shit. And it ended up being exactly what it needed,
So he just kind of followed suit without even realizing it. I don't even need to hear it. I'll just go.
Yeah. Oh, no, exactly. Eric, we were like, what do you want? You want us to write up some chart? Nah, he goes, just press record and we'll see what. And he, after a few takes of each song that he played on, we had it nailed. And he was just telling these amazing stories of all these people that he played with and Bob Dylan and stuff. It was an awesome day. Yeah.
That's, man, see, in that situation, I'd almost forget about what I wanted recorded. I just give me the stories.
Oh, believe me, I was awestruck, man. It doesn't happen to me because I love just treating people like people instead of but I was like, come on. I mean, this dude, he was on Blood, and I still listen to Blood on the Tracks now, totally different because I'm picturing Greg, laying down. It's
his mic should have been on while you guys were recording and telling stories.
I know.
That could have been part of the album.
Yeah.
Every song of yours gets a great Inhofer intro about a totally different album.
That's right.
Has nothing to do with the song.
Yeah, shoot. I wish I would have thought of that.
So Heartbreak Town kind of continues that nastier tone, and I love that. That stuff is awesome.
Guitar on the jukebox making nitty gritty sound. I'm drunker than a monkey in this heartbreak town. Keep that rusted town and country parked up on the curb. Last week I hit a deer.
But then you want to go and make me cry with I Never Knew.
Yeah.
Man, why do you want to make me cry?
I know it's that. Well, that's one of the best compliments a songwriter can get, I think, is tears, because it's such a raw emotion, and it's especially when I've had people, these big kind of Midwest burly farmer dudes, you know, at my shows, and you know, they're staunch, no emotion, and you hear
wearing
them
their overalls at the show.
Yeah, they're kind of connecting with the song at first. You know, obviously they've never heard it, and then you're starting to see tears from these dudes, and they come up to you after the, you know, on the set break, and they're like, man, I just got to tell you, you know, that really. And so that kind of compliment to me is like the best you could get, you know, because it's such a raw feeling, you know.
She overheard them saying that they respectively lost a son and dad, and hope that someday fate might let them meet. And she said, hey there, boys, these next 2 beers are both on me. Here's a couple of shots of heartbreak to ease the pain. If there's one regret I could forget, I wish I'd never known how 2 strangers shared a longing.
So speaking of that, the music is definitely sounds raw and full of emotion, and you explained why, but did you guys do many takes of these tracks, or are these all really early takes, first takes? I mean, was it all done pretty quickly?
Yeah, we wanted to keep it, you know, kind of no more. I think there was one song where we ended up doing, I want to say like 6, but most of them were 3. I didn't want to go over like 3, I think, takes. And a lot of them ended up being the first takes. Eric would remember which ones, but yeah, the first or second, because it was one of those things where you're listening to the mix down and you're like, this one might not be technically perfect, but it's got the coolest sound, you know, vibe, and like the coolest mistakes, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, yeah. So those were the ones we kept. Yeah. So
it's usually first to third take, and you're basically cutting it live.
Right.
Wow. Yep. And I mean, this is the first time a lot of these guys have been hearing this stuff.
It was. And, you know, we would, like, how it happened was, like, say the first song after we were set up, I think it was Convince My Heart was the first song we did. And I had my acoustic and I was like, okay, and just started playing, and these dudes started falling in, and then, okay, let's run it again, you know, okay, let's do it again. And then, okay, press record. So it was like hearing it twice, press record. And it was killer, man. It was their first. Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I noticed is that a lot of the songs sound really personal lyrically. They sound like you've drawn off of your own experience. Is that the case with a lot of the lyric content?
Yeah, a lot of it. And that was, you going back to the cover, you said that's my grandfather on my dad's side, and cool. He lived on Freer Street in Detroit, Michigan, and that's where that came from, and a lot of good memories there. But that I have been holding on to that picture for the longest time. I think my dad shot it, and I was like, this would, you know, be killer on an album at one point, you know, some point. And then when I started putting this stuff together, I was thinking of a cover and a title, and that picture came back up, and I'm like, man, these songs are so personal, you know, Gramps, he was my hero, you know, and so it was like all that came together, and it was such a cool, you know, mesh of things happening. So
that is awesome. And it kind of connects you back to Hit It on the Sly, where, you know, you're connecting with the artwork too.
Totally. Yeah. Yep.
So you
just in a different form, yeah.
You seem to have a really good connection between the visual and musical arts. I love seeing that.
Yeah, I'm a very observant, I think, person by nature. Like, I like to watch and listen, and so I'm always carrying around a little recorder with me, or a paper, because I'll get these weird ideas at the worst time. You know, like, driving down the freeway, and I'm like, I can't stop, and so I'll hit record, and even if I'm speaking like an idea, and a lot of those songs on the Freer Street came from stuff like that, like little melodies that I had hummed, or, you know, and then it just was, yeah. So that's cool how that all works.
So do you have a writing process at all? I mean, do you make yourself write something every day, or is it just when something hits you make a note?
I tried doing and I know that how that works. I have a lot of friends that kind of do the Nashville style of writing, where they put themselves in a room at a certain period of time every day, like a job, you know, and I've tried that and it just never clicked for me. And in my ears, the stuff that was coming out of that personally just didn't sound real and like honest. And so I kind of steered away from that. And for me, I try to let it happen as organic as I can. And when it comes, like, ride with, because I'm a big believer that music, we don't own it. You know, if you understand what I mean, like it's something that comes to you and you're a vessel. You're letting it go, and once you let it go, it's going on to somewhere else, you know. So, and it's becoming something else. So that's kind of how I like to write. And when stuff comes to me, I'll if it feels serious enough to spend the time, I'll do that. But I won't, like, you know, sit there and beat a song like it's got to be this, you know, like Heartbreak Town, for instance. I co-wrote that with a buddy of mine, Nate Walker. It was awesome. And it started as this kind of honky tonk, swampy, you know, up tempo thing. And it was super cool. I still dig the way that we did it. But then when I was presenting it in the studio, it sounded really cool with the band. And we for some reason, we took a break and came back a couple hours later. And Eric Koskinen, the producer who played on it too, I think he either like forgot what we were doing or wasn't feeling it. And he just was sitting there. I vividly remember it. And he starts playing this bump, 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 and this drop D tuning, you know, and I'm looking and I'm like, the lyrics start going in my head with that groove. And I started singing them on the mic and I was like, shit, this is, you know, and then the drummer comes in and I was like, yeah, there, you know, and it just like became this whole other, you know, and Nate, the first time he heard that version, he came to the studio and he was like, oh my God, this is so killer what you guys did, you know. And it was like, it is. Yeah.
That's the one that it's the most Neil Young sounding to me. It's got this like the Stray Gators meets Crazy Horse vibe to it. It's
super cool.
It really is.
And that was a prime example of not forcing something. Like, had I been one of those people that was like, no, you know, I have this way in my mind, it would have never existed, you know. So I'm so glad that we just like we let it lead us, you know, instead of the other way around.
Yeah, when you're open to letting it go where it wants to go, that's when some of my favorite songs are result of that. I'm not a musician, but some of my favorite songs that I've grown up listening to have been a result of that.
Totally, yeah.
With your history of touring all over the place all the time, how often are you out on the road playing your own music?
Well, right now I kind of just keep it to regionally around here because there's so much work and so much going on. And, but I mean, we're, you know, talking about trying to get out, spread out further, especially behind Freer Street, but I miss it. I mean, I hate being in one place for too long. Cause like you said, I grew up on the road and I'm the most comfortable on the road. So it's like, I'm itching to get back out more full time, you know.
That is awesome. So what brought you to Minnesota in the first place?
I followed a girl. No, yeah, she, and we ended up getting married, but she's from Minnesota, born and raised here, and a farm girl from southern Minnesota. And you would never know it. She's amazing. Her personality is amazing, but she moved to Florida after college, and we ended up meeting at a place I was playing at, and cool. We started talking, and and then we started dating and stuff, and she was the one that said, hey, did you ever check out the Twin Cities scene? It's great, you know. And I knew little bits like the Prince and Bob Dylan connections and all that, and we started coming up in the summers to visit her family, and I would book gigs in the summertime, and then started meeting people, and I'm like, damn, man, this is killer. Let's, you know, I said, do you want to move up full time? You know,
that's smart. Mm-hmm. You know, booking summer gigs in Minnesota, so you're not in the Florida heat.
I know. I was like, I do not want to be here in the summer. I've had 30 plus years or whatever, but I'm ready to, you know.
Yeah. I was only 10 years in South Alabama, and I get it.
Oh, that's brutal. I would almost have to venture that might be more brutal, like that region, because I've spent a lot of time in that area, and it gets hottish. I mean, it's hot. like that stagnant heat.
Yeah, I mean, because you're not right out against the water. Because I was in around Dothan area, so if you know, you're familiar with that. So I was a little west of Dothan, in right off of Fort Rucker, Daleville Enterprise area.
Yeah,
and there's it's like living in pea soup.
Yeah, exactly.
So hot, humid. I used to work outside sales, and I would go from my front door in the morning to my car, which was 25 feet. And by the time I got out of the air conditioned house into my car, I'm already sweating.
Totally. Yeah. I used to take changes of clothes with me to gigs because I would be totally drenched, you know, by the first or second break, It was like,
it's just relentless. It
is.
And I will tell you one thing. I went to school up in upstate New York for photography. And so I was in Rochester for several years.
Okay.
The coldest I've ever been in my entire life was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama at my brother's graduation because it was humid and windy and just below freezing. And that just cut through.
I totally get what you're saying. I agree. It like that humid cold that just bites through everything you're wearing.
It does. It's like a knife. I mean, people who've never experienced it just can't understand it. Like, oh my gosh, I lived in Buffalo. That's cold. I'm not saying it's not. It's snow, but
it's cold. It's different. It is. I know what you mean.
It really, you go to the desert. They say, oh, it's a dry heat. It's a wet cold.
And you're usually not. There's no progression to it. It just happens.
Right.
You're wearing shorts and t-shirts and sweating, and then all of a sudden. It's not like living up here where you're getting the season change.
I know. This spring lasts literally like 2 weeks down there.
Yeah,
it's insane. It is I could go on and on about that, but nobody wants to hear that. So you mentioned that you're hoping to get out on the road. Or do you have anything set up already, even regionally or locally?
Just locally, we're doing stuff like we got a big show coming up this weekend in a town called Marine on the St. Croix, Minnesota. It's a long name, but it's a really cool outdoor bar type area, and it gets packed with people. And I've gained a pretty good following there, so I'm seeing the buzz online about the people that are coming and they want to, because the new album's out. So that's going to be a lot of fun. It'll be a good time there. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So what is the best way for people to support the album, to pick it up and listen to it?
The best, you can go to my record label, which is called Farm to Label Records. It's owned by the same guy that owns the studio we recorded at, John Richardson. John's a great dude. He's a drummer and toured with Gin Blossoms and a bunch of other big names back in the 90s.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it's his studio, but he started a label called Farm to Label Records, and I signed with him. And so if you go to farmtolabel.com, farmtolabelrecords.com, you can grab copies of the vinyl, which it sounds amazing on vinyl. And it's also on all the streaming platforms. And I think John's pressing some CDs too. They're coming soon, but he wanted to get it out on vinyl, and I've been selling them off stage, and it sounds killer. If you have a turntable, I highly recommend, that platform.
That is awesome. Yeah, no, vinyl. I love vinyl. Like I said, I went to school for photography, so I'm a visual guy, and I love the size of vinyl. I get so nervous playing it. I've got an okay turntable, not a great one. I'm just always afraid I'm going to damage it. I go. So I've always been a big CD guy. I mean, if I could show you the quote unquote studio, aka my living room, I've got piles of CDs just sitting around here that I've got to put away. But so I'm a big CD guy.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. So
I love having a physical copy of the albums. I don't feel like I've really bought it if I don't have something.
I know
tangible.
What you mean. I know exactly what. That's the same way I am. People are like, "Well, just download it." I'm like, "Yeah, but I want to have the, the thing." Yeah.
And you've got that really awesome photo and then the cool artwork. I'm not going to sit there and stare at a JPEG on my computer screen.
Right.
I will stare at a vinyl album or a CD cover and read the liner notes. I'm not going to do it on my computer.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm the same way. That's cool.
And then when I do that, I'm listening to the album. I'm absorbing the album. If I'm downloading it, or listening to a stream, I'm doing something else. And so it's not really sinking in.
And I think people have lost that, I know, like, the whole thing of putting something, in a disc player or on the turntable and then sitting down and either reading the liner or absorbing it, versus just flipping through Spotify. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah. And I don't know anybody really who listens to an album front to back on Spotify.
Right.
So it's, you lose that whole album feel, album quality of music.
Totally.
I hate that. I mean, because there's a reason you put out albums. I mean, at this point, and I've had this discussion with a lot of people on the podcast, it's almost like we've gone back to the roots of rock where everything was a single. People are just putting out singles, and the album has gone by the wayside, hopefully only for the time being, but I agree. Yeah. It's a shame. It really is a shame.
Because people, they spent the time, like I spent the majority of the time on Freer Street, like trying to figure out what I wanted the track order to be, because it meant something to me to not just slap the song. I tried so many different variations, and the one that that it ended up being, I love how it progresses.
You just reminded me of something. Oh, go ahead. I'll tell you what I was thinking.
Especially between you even brought it up, and I'm glad you pointed it out, and you were hip to it. Like the Stubborn Bones into Heartbreak Town, that was the coolest thing to me, because especially on vinyl, it gives you the 4 tracks, and it ends with Stubborn Bones, and then you're turning it over, and by the time you're sitting down again, that Heartbreak's already kicking in, and I'm like, that's super cool. Like how that,
Yes.
So yeah,
I love it. So you brought up something interesting, and I've always wanted to do a podcast about this. So maybe I'll have you back on again if you're interested. The importance of sequencing an album.
Yep.
It's a whole, with the way things are now, it's almost like a lost art. And I'd love to learn more about how artists sequence albums. So if you're ever interested in coming back on, I'd love to do a show about sequencing.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, man. Because I'm really into that. I really pay attention to that when I write my set lists, for live shows, and it means something to me to have transitions that make people, get, not just get a reaction, but like stir something inside of them. And I think you can do that with sequencing, for sure.
Absolutely. I'm just making a note on my notes to reach out to you about doing an episode about sequencing. So,
yeah.
So
cool.
What is the best way for people to follow you and when you're going out on tour? Hopefully you can expand beyond regional and maybe hit the East Coast a little bit, because I live outside of DC, and DC's got some awesome places to play. So I would love to catch a live show.
Totally, man. Yeah. It's, if you just go to my website, TonyCuchetti.com, I put all my live shows on there. And then I also, as much as I'm against it and hate it, I put it on the socials, but it's like, it's a useful tool for that stuff. And I always try to really hit it hard on there to kind of let people know where I'm. So yeah, I have a lot of good friends still on the East Coast. So they're begging me to come over there. So I would love to get out there and play, and I will at some point. So
this has been awesome. I have loved the album, and I love going back and hearing the news, the older stuff, and hearing the progression to get to Freer Street, because I think it's a really awesome journey, and I love what you've done with the evolving sound. I love when artists do that. So when I hear it, so thank you so much for joining me.
I hear you, man. Cool.
I've really had a blast.
Raindrops beating on a tin roof. Old Mabel napping again. Texas boys singing a song about 2 pennies sitting on a rail. Take a walk, wheel ripping, run up to my homeboy B. He lost his teeth, found with a pavement. Now he's trying to stay out the infirmary. A man, what a shame. He flashed them shiny new guns my way. it's